To Conversations from the Living Room at 222. I'm Jeneen Kohler with Repairing the Breach Ministries. We'll just wait and see if anybody comes on here. Make sure we have a good connection. We have a special day for you today. If anybody's watching us, just wait and see if anybody comes on here. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. I'm blessed today to have my former classmate from high school with me, Theresa Diehl. She is the author of Through the Fire. It's a book that came out in March. Last week it was at number 17 in the family and spiritual category of Amazon. She has an incredible story of faith, strength, and perseverance. And she deserves to be on a much grander platform than she is today. But I'm just happy to have you here, happy to have you by my side. This is her first time sharing her story publicly, and she and I both agree that it's much easier to write a book and hide behind that than it is to share your story vocally with other people. So just keep her in your prayers today as she begins to share what she's been through and what the Lord has done for her, and I think you're going to be really, really blessed. Through the Fire is Theresa's personal account of the anger, resentment, and pain caused by an unsolved cold case house fire in the mountains of North Carolina. Through God's presence, His silent whispers, and His unimaginable grace, Theresa sits here today, happy, whole, healed, and at peace. I want to read a poem that she wrote. And Theresa, you wrote this when you were 16 years old?
I did.
Okay, it's called Why Me? I want to read this to you before Theresa begins to tell us the account of the night that changed her life so drastically. I cried out for you, Mama, but you were nowhere to be seen. My eyes were filled with tears and smoke as I called out your name. I was left all alone as the flames beckoned to me. Oh God, please, why me? The flames overtook me and they would not let go. As they took away my skin, my beauty, my hair, my fingers, and my clothes. They even tried to take away my very own soul, but I would not let them. I just could not let go. Theresa, on April 27th, 1976, and I quote from your book, "For most people it was just a normal day, but it was the day that changed my life forever." What happened?
I was in a house fire. We were living at my uncle's house in West Asheville, and we were staying there at that time because my mom and dad didn't have a place to live, and my uncle was letting us stay there. But this particular day, they got in a fight, and my uncle asked my mother to leave. And my sister Karen and I recall hearing them fight. In the backyard. We were outside playing, and my Uncle Lucille actually came and picked us up, and she took us out to another uncle's house in Weaverville, and I remember being very excited about going out there because he said that he had a surprise for us, and when we got there, he had a little red tricycle for us to ride and play with, so I remember playing with that all throughout the afternoon, and then finally it got dark, and we went to lay down in bed. Mom was nowhere around, but my sister and I, we went and laid down, and my uncle lived in a very small house, a one bedroom, one kitchen house, and I remember that the bed didn't have any sheets on it. It was just an old bed. And I remember that night, not long after
you had fallen asleep.
After I had fallen asleep, waking up, and when I woke up at first I thought, I was having a nightmare, but I quickly realized that the house was on fire.
That's okay. Okay.
I looked around, and my mom and my baby sister were nowhere to be seen. I called out for them. by this time I realized that my foot had gotten stuck down in a mattress spring from the old bed, and I struggled to get out, but I realized I couldn't get out. And by this time I was having trouble breathing. I was gasping for air.
And I remember you saying you were 4 years old, and I remember you saying even then thoughts went through your head, this is it, I'm gonna die.
I realized that at some point that this is it, because nobody was coming to get me, and I knew, that I was gonna die. And I almost had a sense of peace for a moment.
Of just letting go.
After struggling for so long. And the next thing that happened is I heard my uncle, yelling out, Theresa, Theresa. And by this time, the smoke and the flames, I couldn't really see, but I heard him. I recognized his voice.
And at that point, they had already sort of started taking over and burning your clothes and that.
Oh yeah, I mean the heat from the fire and the flames were already, melting my skin. And my eyes actually, had swollen shut.
Yeah.
From the.
So you could hear him, but you couldn't see him.
Right, exactly. But he ended up coming in and getting my foot unstuck, and I remember him taking me to the nearby window and pushing me out to my mom, who was reaching for me from the window.
And he didn't make it, did he, Theresa?
He didn't. The house ended up falling in on him right after he pushed me out.
So I bet he's always been a special uncle to you. Gave his life to save yours.
My angel in heaven. Yes.
And his name was Clifford?
Clifford. Yes.
So this was a picture of Theresa. I'm not sure. Beautiful little girl. And what was life like for this little girl?
Very chaotic. Many of my memories are of moving around, never having a stable place to live. My parents were alcoholics.
Did that bring a lot of fear?
It did.
Into your life, to have such an unstable atmosphere?
It did. Yeah, never having the security, of knowing where I was going to sleep or where I was going to get my next meal from.
No child should have to endure that.
No. But it was, just very chaotic, and a lot of, actually one of the things I talk about in my book is them laying around drunk, all over the steps,
all day
the
long,
living room floor, and me having to take care of my baby sister
at 4 years old.
At 4 years old,
and she was 2.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, her name is Karen.
Karen, yes.
So the house fire left Theresa with 65% burns on her body, and 43 of those 65% was 3rd degree.
Yes.
And so this is her, just
4 months past the burn.
4 months past the house fire. How long were you in the hospital recovering altogether?
Well, the first day in the hospital, I stayed at Mission in Asheville for a few days until I got stabilized. But then they flew me to Cincinnati, Ohio, and I was there for about 3
You were at the
months.
Shriners Hospital?
The Shriners,
in Cincinnati.
yes.
For how long? 3 months?
Yes.
Okay. And, you look at what Theresa's been through and you think, wow, how could a child 4 years old, that was enough just to go through that and suffer what she suffered. But there was another element to the situation as you were in the Shriners Hospital. A little girl would need the presence of her parents and family around, and that was something that you didn't have, did you?
My mother was there for a short period. I don't know if it was a week or 2, but then she disappeared. Yes.
Do you know where she was or what happened to her?
No, I mean, I know that she went back home, but the story she told me when I got older was that, she kept asking the doctors and the nurses if I was going to make it, and they kept telling her that they didn't know, that it was that I was very unstable, and she couldn't bear to see me the way that I
Wow.
was.
Which I can understand, but at the same time, I think I would hope that my love for my child would outweigh what I couldn't look at. I would want to be there for my child, but
she was an alcoholic, and that's
didn't have proper perspective.
Right.
So you didn't have that. So that you mentioned that in the book that even though your mom was not present, and we know that your father wasn't present, there was a presence that was around you at all times while you were in the hospital in Cincinnati. Who was that?
It was Jesus. That's so powerful for me. At that time, I didn't know it was him, but I did. I felt a presence literally pressed up right against my bed. And for 6 weeks, which you'll read in my book, but for 6 weeks my eyes were sewn shut. So I couldn't see, I could just feel, and I felt
Wow.
him there. Yes.
So for people who think that God does not exist, this is coming from, the mouth of a child who, was by that time maybe turned 5. Did you turn 5
Yes.
by that time? And experiencing the presence of God, not really knowing what to call it, but you felt it, and he was there, and he brought you peace, and he was that friend that stuck closer than a father or a mother.
Right.
So what you did eventually, you were able to return home to Asheville, Weaverville area, and you were reunited with your mom and sister. What was that like?
Well, I was excited, about it. I had been in the hospital, and I hadn't seen my sister and my mother, and I was very excited about it, but I quickly realized that, when I left, the inside of me felt normal, I still felt like I was that child before I was
Sure.
burnt. And when I left the hospital, it didn't hit me that I was different, until I saw my mother, and
Wow.
and there was that hesitance, she didn't hug me the way that she had always hugged me, and my sister was scared of me, of course, because I look like that,
Right.
so it was
Yes.
my first experience of not an intentional, but a rejection.
Sure. At one point, you were taken away from your mother. How many years were you a foster child?
Well, I lived in the hospital at Tom's for 4 years, and at the age of 7, they decided that I needed to get home, to find a home for me. So I actually was in foster care for about 2 years, going around to different homes.
Do you recall how many homes?
I don't. There were so many homes, and most of them was a one-time ordeal. But I remember very vividly, after a period of time, the excitement that I felt quickly turned into, disappointment and anger, and I felt like I was being passed around,
Right.
like a
Like
dog.
you were a tryout, like they would try you out, and if it didn't work, they would
Right.
just give you back,
Right.
which for anybody would be another round of rejection.
Yes.
So I don't believe there's anybody that could go through what you've been through and not feel a sense of rejection. You don't have to go through something that Theresa's been through to feel rejection. I have felt rejection. Many of you watching have felt rejection. Rejection from family, rejection from society. In what ways did that rejection, other than what you've already told us today, tell us a story about just going to the grocery store or Dollar General or
Well, growing up, being in homes and being out in the community is when it hit me the most. When I was home, I felt safe and secure. But in the community, I was always faced with people asking why I had a mask on, why I looked like an alien. been laughed at. I told you a story. I was in the Asheville Mall one time. It was around Halloween, and I remember going around the corner, and I ran into an adult, and I scared him. I mean, and he just started hysterically laughing at me, and
I can't imagine, just feeling that way in a society of such vanity, where everybody worries whether they have a pimple on their nose or, and then this is something that you have to deal with every day.
And I usually dealt with it by just looking down most of my life until later on when Jesus healed my inner being. I looked down because I couldn't look at people, because I could just in an instant tell, that what they were thinking,
Sure.
And it hurt. It was always this feeling of like a stab in my chest.
Did it make you want to stay home a lot and just not get out into the community very much?
I did. I mean, a lot, especially during my early 20s, I stayed home a lot. And especially when I did go out, though, like children, it was very hard for me to I kind of get emotional, faced by children, and I constantly found myself turning around, like if I was in line and there was a child in front, I didn't want to scare them, it was like,
Because they don't understand.
They don't understand. But
and like we discussed earlier, not all parents, help their children understand, and explain a situation like Teresa's. Some just pull their kids away, stop staring, and they don't teach them properly.
And even that hurts because, you want them to know, you want them to understand
that
what
you're
happened.
a real person, just this is what happened to you. Right. Teresa writes beautiful poetry, and in her book, if you purchase the book, she's included some of her poems in there. I've already read one of them, but I wanted to read this one. She's got it entitled Emotions, because I think through all of the rejection, I'm sure that it created some sense of identity crisis. I mean, it would for any of us. And so this is what Teresa wrote. Do you remember how old you were when you wrote this one?
I was also a teenager. That actually was published in our high school literary magazine.
Okay, awesome. It says, tears, fears, anger, pain, creeping into her mind again. Sadness, darkness, memories past, how much longer will it all last? Struggling, quarreling with herself, holding back the tears, she cries for help. Calmness, control, that's what she must do, for her true emotions must not shine through. Deep within, there's a child so full of hate. Not knowing how to face it all, she must escape. Barriers, walls, she has many built, trying to hide all the shame and guilt. Crying out, her soul does within, trying to reach the surface once again. Slowly, patiently, the pain is revealed. Maybe in time she can be truly healed. Let's talk about being truly healed, because you are today. Teresa went to was it a tent revival?
It was.
And a very special minister that night spoke a prophetic word over your life.
Yes.
Do you remember what he said?
I do. I actually went to the tent meeting with my real mother, Ellen. She invited me, and at that time I had never been to a tent meeting. I didn't even know what to expect. But after I got there, I quickly realized that there was a preacher, and he was very prophetic, and he was laying hands on people. And I remember sitting there off to the back, with my mother and a few other family members, and scared. I actually was praying, dear God, please
don't let him come to me.
I think
we all do that.
Yes. Because it was so obvious I needed prayer. So, and the tent meeting started winding down, and I thought, okay, I'm free. I got off,
Right.
But then he comes over to me, and he lays his hand on me, and actually, right before this happened, I had a suicidal.
Okay.
Yeah, that I think we missed that, but anyway, he had laid his hands on me, and I started crying. I mean, hysterically, you know, trying to control myself. And he told me, he said, you know, Satan has tried to take your life. He's trying to take something from you, but God has bigger and better plans for your life. And he said that a miracle was getting ready to come my way.
And you expressed to me that several people thought God was just going to heal you from the outside, right?
Right.
But that's not what happened.
That's not. I mean, I seriously had an inner healing. You know, I grew up with so much anger and resentment and pain, you know, and God literally has healed me from the inside.
And you know, the inside's more important than the outside. You can be a beautiful person on the outside and be a mess on the inside, and hate yourself and be full of anger and pain and resentment. So really what God did for Theresa was the main thing that we all need, is inner healing.
Yes.
Yeah. So he expressed that you know, God was going to do a miracle and heal you. How long after did you begin to feel like a new person? Was it an instant thing, or it was over time? And you were eventually adopted by a very loving family called the Vandermeers. Tell us about the Vandermeers.
Yes. In my search for a home at the age of 7, I actually had met the Vandermeers. They came into our life, and
so they were one of the families
they were one
that
of the
you
families
got to go stay with
Yes.
for the weekend to see if you liked it.
Right.
And you didn't like it.
I did.
What didn't you like about it? I remember this funny story.
Yes. I told the social workers that I did not like their dog. But they were very strict. I had to wear a Job's garment at that time, and of course, a Job's garment. It's like literally like a mask.
Okay.
That zipped up in the back, but it just left holes in my eyes and my mouth and nose.
And this was because of your condition, not because of something the Vandermeers wanted you to do.
No, it was from my accident.
Yeah.
It helped smooth my scars out.
Right.
And I had other splints and stuff, but they, of course, made me wear them. And I thought, I was looking for a family that was going to be easy and spoil me, but it wasn't them.
Right.
At that time.
But it was just what you needed, wasn't it?
Yes.
Because you've expressed that instead of allowing you to be an introvert, they pushed you to come out and be more than you were going to allow yourself to be.
Yes, years later when they came back into my life, they were the most perfect family God could ever have chosen for me.
In fact, you call them Mom and Dad.
Yes.
Even though Dad has passed away now. He passed away in 2012?
2000. Yeah.
2000, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So you still refer to Mrs. Vandermeer as Mom?
Oh, yes.